And I picked this topic because it seems to be a topic that's been recurring in my treatment room. And so I thought I would talk about it, mind map it, answer questions that may be relevant to your lives, and take a look at porn and body dysmorphia from a mind map perspective. So, what is body dysmorphia? According to the definition, it's an obsessive focus on perceived body flaws. And I may add, it could lead to bulimia, it could lead to anorexia, it could lead to a lot of plastic surgery and implants and so on and so forth, Botox. It could also lead to death, as you know, because if you starve yourself, you may lose electrolytes, shut off your body, and die. So, this is a pretty serious topic. And not only does it affect our bodily health, it also affects our psychological well being and also affects our relationships. So, with that said, the statistics seem to say that there are over 200,000 cases a year of body dysmorphia, but I just don't think so. I think that there are more than that. I think that to certain degrees, people are unhappy with the size of their nose, the size of their ears. They're unhappy with their weight. They're unhappy with their breasts. They're unhappy with the size of their penis. They're unhappy with their bottom. They're unhappy with their stomach. They're unhappy with a lot of things. And yeah, that part of it is human nature. We all want to look beautiful. We all want to be desirable, but at a certain point, it crosses the line and it starts getting very dark and very destructive to relationships. So this is a call-in show, everyone. So please do call in. I know we've been having a little tech problem with volume. And so if you noticed anything, please go ahead and communicate with my tech support via chat so that things could be adjusted and hopefully things will go very smoothly. So, with that said, I want to get into pornography and what it does, which it gives a distorted view of men's and women's bodies and also a distorted image of the sexual act. All that moaning, all that groaning, all of that multiple orgasmic expression, it gives the feeling it gives the impression that sex is this big, gigantic, orgasmic, multi-orgasmic experience. And if you don't have it that way, maybe there's something wrong with your relationship. So here's what I've been finding in the treatment room. I have been finding that men and even women may resort to pornography or other forms of going outside the relationship. And as a result of that, they harm the relationship. And so, why do I say they harm the relationship? Because they can create via this kind of acting out a sense of envy and a sense of a message to the significant other, that you're not good enough, you're not pretty enough, you're not sexy enough. So let's go ahead and mind map this thing to see the fallout material and how porn can infect a relationship and cause a lot of chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. So if you don't mind putting the mind map up, and I do hope that the volume will hold through the images. And if you're having trouble hearing me, please chat with tech support and we'll see what we could do about it. So if you look at the mind map, you will see that the mind map is divided into 3 rows. The top row represents the past encodings. The middle row represents the chaos, defenses, and breakdowns of today. The bottom row represents the morph out and the paradigm shift into healing and unity. So let's go look at panel number 1 and the wounds of childhood that may lead to acting out, that may lead to body dysmorphia. and how does it even lay down on a causal level? So you see all those shadows in the background, they represent all of the injuries of childhood wounds. And the light in the background represents, I'm using the mind map metaphorically, of course, the light represents your full potential self. It represents your light. And when we are shadowed over by childhood wounds, it limits our growth, it limits our capacity to be the best of our best. So, what are those shadows that I am talking about? They're shadows that represent physical abuse, sexual abuse, verbal abuse, neglect and smothering, and then the narcissistic wound, which I talk about quite extensively on my shows, the narcissistic abuse, where the system goes wrong, and instead of the parent putting themselves, their children first, they put their own needs and wishes and wants first. And as a result of it, leave the child very, very impressionably scarred with the message that they're not important. And so this is really a wound of apathy. If the parents don't care, the child will not get the proper mirroring and attunement that they need for their psychological growth. And so I'm going to just kind of include some case studies without invading anybody's privacy and changing up some of the names and so on. So let's say that Sally comes in and we discover that her wounds of childhood include sexual abuse or maybe even sexual overstimulation. Well, how can that happen? Sometimes parents are not really careful with their boundaries, and so as a result of their boundarylessness, they may leave around porn magazines or even put porn on the television or forget to close the door when they're making love, or worse, out and out sexual inappropriate touching and fondling of the child. So when a person is over sexualized this way, they don't know what to do with the energy. And so this energy builds up. And so as a result of that, they may resort to constant release via porn, masturbation, massage parlors, happy endings, affairs, so on. And this also gets mixed usually with drugs and alcohol, and so the boundaries keep going down and down and down, and then that's the chaos that results from that wound. On top of which, sometimes children experience verbal abuse. So if mom or dad is saying something like, "You're ugly, you're just not a feminine kind of a little girl," or if they say to their son, "You are just not a man. Look at you. You're so short. Look at your pimples. Look at your ears. Look at your nose." So can you see how these messages encode into the fiber of a person's being, leaving them with these impressions? And over again, I explain to my patients how this becomes ingrained. I call it the psychovirus, how this psychovirus enters the mind and keeps spinning around endlessly ad nauseum. And even if your parents are not there, even if they're deceased, these messages keep reverberating in the head. And now, instead of the parents calling you stupid or ugly or not good enough or not lovable, what you have here is an inner voice generating these messages. And this inner voice is just as cruel, if not crueler, than the voice of your parents. And so here comes a partner that is engaged in porn, and instead of making love to his wife, or instead of her making love to her husband, she's more interested in the magazine or more interested in the picture, the movie on the screen. And so what happens here is that the reaction to the wound is instigated. The reaction, let's look at panel 2. The reaction to the wound, which is the wounds of childhood, get activated, and the amygdala goes into this kind of a fight flight mode. And if there's been a lot of neglect in the child's life, if the child doesn't feel mirrored and important enough, then this porn will represent that they're not important enough and that they're not special and that they're not worth it. And could you see how this goes down a very, very dark rabbit hole? And then it activates in the core belief department, which are all of those um, uh, horrible core beliefs that we buy into. And I named a few, but just to continue along the path of the encoding, these core beliefs may be very, very deep and very, very uh, 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 psychologically injurious to the person. And they may include messages like, you're ugly, you're not sexy, you're replaceable, you're just an object, you're not worth it, you should never have even been born. And can you see that one partner's acting out can be an entire activating system for the wounds of childhood, kind of like ripping them open, and then having these reactions and these encodings fire off in the person's mind. And what does this lead to? Human disconnect, which is my title of the book, Healing Human Disconnect. Be the cause, healing human disconnect. Why disconnect? Because the partners are not no longer connected, because they're not looking at each other, they're not keeping the energy within the relationship. This energy is exiting the relationship, and the sexual energy is being thwarted toward the this perfect sexual being that is probably computer generated and made over and enhanced and so on and so forth. And then in order for the person to then feel that they have to earn their love back and earn their attention back, what do? So I want to hear from you, and I want to hear how you relate to this topic. I'm sure that there are many of you who either know someone who's had extensive plastic surgery as a result of not feeling pretty enough, sexy enough. I'm sure that there are a lot of you out there who imagine that your significant other, whether it be your partner, your spouse, think that you're not pretty enough for them because you're not their type. This is something that comes up a lot in the treatment room. A person might say to me, I don't think I'm my husband's type. Well, what do you mean you're not your husband's type? Well, he's been staring at these blonde women or women with big breasts or women with large derrieres, or it could be vice versa, that where the man doesn't think that he is his significant other's type because she's already said, wow, my ideal role model of a man is George Clooney or whoever. I don't watch a lot of TV, so I'm a little bit empty on coming up with male role models. But you can see the point here that somewhere in this conversation, the energy is not connected in the relationship. As a matter of fact, it is disconnected. And I very much encourage you to download a free copy of my PDF, Be the Cause Healing Human Disconnect, because in the book I talk about a case study where one of the partners feels like she's a blow up doll, and she doesn't even feel that she's a human. She feels more like an object. And that's the problem here, is instead of a human connection, what the porn brings into the picture along with these triggers is an objectification of sex. And when there's an objectification of sex, there is no intimacy. So all we can have here is panel 4, 5, 6. So 4 is the chaos, and the chaos includes the arguments and the tears and the hurt feelings and the threat to the relationship. And then people will defend against the chaos, and so they'll defend on 2 levels. They'll defend against their wounds of childhood. So if they don't feel pretty enough and sexy enough, they may resort to losing weight or throwing up, going bulimic so that they can manage their weight, or going to the plastic surgeon several times. I could recall back in the day when I had a stop smoking clinic and a weight loss clinic. This was a long time ago. It was called Habit Breakers. And I was not a psychologist at the time, and I was doing a lot of behavioral work. And I had a young woman who was a beautiful, beautiful woman. She was a penthouse centerfold. She was that beautiful. And she was coming to me for stopping smoking, and she wanted me to do other work with her, but I couldn't at the time because I wasn't really qualified to do the deeper work. But every time I saw her, she was morphing. And one week, she had the most gorgeous, perfect nose. And one week, she said, "You see my nose? It's not 100% straight. So next week, when I come back, that will be straightened out." And I'm thinking, gee, what is going on here? Because this woman has the most beautiful nose. And then the few weeks later, it was her knees, and she would show me her knees, and then she would squeeze her knees together and say, "See, look at all that cellulite. I'm going to go get my knees sucked out." And this did not stop. And of course, I didn't exactly know what to do for this poor woman, but I sure remember the journey that she was on, because in essence, her childhood wounds, as I remember them, had to do with a very, very critical father, a very sexual father, as a matter of fact, who was having a lot of affairs and hurting her mother's feelings. So you can see that it's very complicated. These wounds of childhood, they react and then they encode and then they break down into chaos, and then people move into defensive mode. And how do you defend against not feeling beautiful enough or good enough? Well, you go under the knife, and then when you come out from under the knife, you think you're going to feel more beautiful, and sometimes that's the case. But I remember years ago I had on my show a really wonderful surgeon, plastic surgeon, Dr. Robert Applebaum. He works in Beverly Hills, and we had a discussion about body dysmorphic disorder. And he stated in the interview that people would have this plastic surgery, and guess what? After the surgery, they still felt that they had a big nose or big ears or small boobs or fat on their stomach. And so, can you see that it doesn't necessarily have to do with the physicality? I call this the cracked lens of perception. So, the cracked lens of perception is when we're not seeing psychologically straight. And when we're not seeing psychologically straight, everything is distorted and everything is problematic, and everything points to the back to the cause, which is I'm not pretty enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not sexy enough, I'm too short, I'm too fat, I'm too thin, I'm too blonde, I'm too dark, I have too much hair on my arms, I have too much this. And I'm not dissing these procedures. I think everybody wants to look better, but there's a point at which it becomes unhealthy and it takes the energy out of the relationship. And when the defense mechanisms go into the porn, then we go back into that ride of, oh, geez, my husband or my wife wants to look at that person and not me. And it truly is a human disconnect. So I want to hear from you. Please call in. I want to hear how you relate to this subject, because it is something that has always shown up in my treatment room, but especially recently, which is why I decided to talk about this topic. So let's go into some of the defense mechanisms and symptoms people end up with as a result of comparing themselves with others. And by the way, this doesn't have to only be porn. This could be a fantasy person that your husband or your wife tells you about, that sticks in your head like a bad, what's that called, earworm song, and you play it over and over, and all you could see is the description of her in your head as compared to your own body. And it really rattles you and keeps you up at night. and then it gets bigger and bigger. So this is how big it can get. You go out to a restaurant and you watch your significant other stare at another person, a very sexy person, and then there it goes again. I'm not good enough. I'm not this enough. I'm not pretty enough. I'm not. And it is endless. And that's an example of the WTF. So more symptoms can arise. As I mentioned, people will do anything to be loved. And especially if you've been brought up by narcissistic parents who have no empathy, and narcissistic parents who use you to look good so that they can look good, the heat is really on. And I remember, I'll just call it case number XYZ. And this young woman was told by her father that she was unacceptably fat. And this tortured her. And she tried to please her father, but anything that she would do to please her father would fail because she had other sisters and other siblings that were much thinner, and these thinner siblings were shown more attention. So this message was very detrimental to her well-being, and she went into a deep, dark depression, feeling that she was not lovable, and unless she lost the weight, nothing was going to save her. And of course, even losing the weight was a very futile act, because then it would be something else. So can you see how it's never enough? And so when parents come from the consciousness of using their children as a reflection of looking good, then this can again be that kind of wound that creates a template in the child's mind that they're not this enough and that enough. And so in order to really uh, get the love that they're missing and get the love that they should have had from day one, through mirroring and attunement and Dr. John Bowlby's attachment theory type of behavior, which includes eye contact and skin contact and breastfeeding and really being attuned to your child. If the child is objectified, it is really the setup for this kind of acting out behavior and this kind of human disconnect. So I'm going to pause for a second because I'm sure there are people out there who can relate to this, and let's do some mind mapping and see how you've been groomed to feel inadequate, how you've been groomed to react to these horrific wounds, and how you've been encoded with these horrible messages that limit you, that injure you, that reverberate in your head and leave you compromised. Because that's what a negative core belief is. It's negative. It's based on a lie. It comes from the blueprint of your family. Oftentimes, it's multi-generational. And so, in order to move past this, those negative core beliefs have to be dismantled. And when you've got a couple in couples therapy and one is triggering the other, then we've got to really pull back and say, um, that behavior is going to press the button of all of the things that I've been talking about, the inadequacies and the lack of sexiness and beauty and so on and so forth. And so these are really, really serious triggers, because imagine if you're so toxically bonded to somebody, whether it be a significant other or your parents or anybody, then you will do anything to be loved. And if your idea is now, let's control it. If I'm a little thinner or a lot thinner, if I undergo this plastic surgery and I get rid of all my cellulite, if I straighten my nose, if I pin my ears back, if I, the list is endless. And again, I'm not picking on people who've done these procedures. I think in moderation, I think they can enhance somebody and make them feel better about themselves and more youthful. But I'm talking about those times when they are really setups for that human disconnect that bring them down and disconnect them from true intimacy. Now, I did do a show on this topic, and it was a show on um, vulnerability versus control. And so you can see that it is very vulnerable to be imperfect. You meet somebody, for example, and you really like this person, and then you start thinking about, oh, I wonder if they think I'm too fat, or I wonder if they are looking at my wrinkles, or I wonder if they're looking at my big ears. And can you see how this draws the person away from the conversation and the intimacy? And so this is a huge problem that we're having because we're so groomed to have to make the grade, make the beauty grade, make the sexy grade, be young, be thin, whatever it is. That unless unless we're not triggered in these areas, we go into these situations um, and then we're in trigger land and we're not having a lot of fun at all because all we could think of is, wait a minute, did he stare at another person or did she make eyes at another man? Is she texting somebody else? And it's very, very complicated. So I do want to hear from you. I hope I get a call in tonight, and that would be awesome. And, we give out free consultations, so you can avail yourself of a free consultation as well. And so I'm talking about serious disconnect here that leads sometimes to death. And we all know about the many surgeries that end up with death. People who undergo plastic surgery and unfortunately they don't wake up. And sometimes people just press it, and sometimes they even go to unprofessional people or take risks that they shouldn't be taking, even at the advice of their regular MD, and they push the limit. Why? Because they want to be loved. They want to be accepted. They want to hold that love. And in order to hold that love, which is a slippery slope, they have to keep morphing. So I hope you're getting the picture of how porn can lead to body dysmorphia, which can lead to all kinds of health issues and psychological issues and relationship disconnects and even breakups and divorce. And another aspect of this is that porn can be quite addicting. And so when we train our eyes on porn, when we train our eyes on that perfect buttock or the perfect abs or the perfect whatever it is, then we're really creating these associations with that perfect. And so when we are with a human, then we may, in our minds, be disappointed that they're not perfect and they may not arouse us to the level to which we want to be aroused. So it's really, really taking us away from the intimacy with our own partners. I want to hear from you. I know you're out there. I know that many of you have had experiences where you felt disconnected from your partner because they've looked at somebody else or they've been caught masturbating to porn or flipping through magazines and looking at different abs and then even commenting, wow, I wish you looked like that. And oh, there's my menu. Oh, if only, why don't you get big boobs that look like her or do your face like her? And this is just a never ending cycle. There is no fix to this. So you can go from surgery to weight loss program to throwing up your food to any other resources to prevent this thing However, um, the prevention is really to go back to the source, to go back to the cause and dismantle this whole blueprint that led to this objectification of the relationship. I'm going to go down now into panel number 7, and we'll talk about porn and body dysmorphia from the context of synergy and interconnection versus vampiring and destruction. So, when there is synergy in a relationship, there is safety, there are boundaries, there's an intention to bond with each other, there's an intention to enhance the other as the other enhances you, and there's light in that relationship. By what I mean by the light is that 1 plus 1 is greater than two phenomenon. So the idea is you make that other person a better human, and they make you a better human. The opposite of that, as you recall from many, many of my videos, is the vampire effect, where you're just pulling energy from the other person. And by pulling energy, you're really changing the balance of the relationship from a synergistic one to a vampiring relationship where maybe you have one upsmanship on your partner, and your partner is objectifying you, or putting you down and projecting on you that you're not good enough. And so the formula there gets flipped upside down, and instead of enhancement, it's a detraction. Instead of safety, it's danger. Instead of love, it's objectification. And so you can see that this is really a pivotal point in relationships. And if you want your relationship to grow, you've got to have a real fair discussion with your partner regarding porn, regarding being involved in anything outside your relationship. And I'm talking mostly sexually, breaking the hermetically sealed package of that relationship. Because once it's broken, these psychoviruses come in, and if we don't heal at the causal level, they just keep reverberating into these horrible messages that were put in there in the first place. I can't tell you how many people, unfortunately, that I see in my practice who've been sexually abused or have watched their parents be abused and beaten and left. And so those kinds of messages in particular put in the child's mind that that this is what life looks like. Mommy's going to sleep with a lot of people, or daddy's going to break the family and go sleep with a lot of people, or partners are interchangeable, and then they will also reflect on, why did daddy leave me? Oh, I see, he left me because the other woman was more beautiful, or the other woman was young. And then the mom might reinforce that and say, that bastard, your dad left because he told me that I was too old or too wrinkly or too fat. So very careful what you model to your children. Really careful. If you're a parent or you want to be a parent, please be careful what you're sending out there, and really mind your boundaries, because once those boundaries are broken, this is multi-generational. It's amazing, but we think that we're not going to repeat the past. And guess what we do? We repeat the past. And day after day, I'm connecting the dots for people to show them how that template, that blueprint, that panel 1, and the reactions and the encodings are what that set them up or groom them to have poor relationships and poor self-image, that then then they lower their bar, and then they settle for people who treat them like objects, and they settle for settling for a porn-filled or a relationship that doesn't feel comfortable to that other person. So check in with your gut. If it doesn't feel right, it's not right. And so if it doesn't feel right, it's not right, then you get to open your mouth and you get to recontract the relationship, and you get to let that other person know where it hurts. And if it hurts, then that person, if they care about you and if they want to continue along the relationship, either they're going to really, really care for your feelings, and they're going to honor your feelings, and vice versa. So if you have any, if we have any callers, I would love to hear from you. And I hope that the volume is okay. I hope everybody can hear me uh, very clearly tonight. I did get good microphone and headset, and I hope that helps, because I know a lot of people have been struggling to hear me clearly. And so it's that serious. Once you start going down the yellow brick road of objectification, and once you start tampering with activating people's negative core beliefs, then you're straight up heading into chaos, defenses, and breakdowns. And if there's nobody else that wants to call in, or nobody that wants to call in, let me tell you a little bit about the Psychological Healing Center. We have a beautiful team of people who are very savvy with the mind map, and the people on staff are able to help you through this from through to model, from the wounds of childhood through dismantling them to shifting into health. And you're welcome to a free consultation. I also have the mind map video series that you can purchase. And this mind map video series is a complete breakdown of the mind map hosted by me, and going through each and every panel and connecting the dots. And it is best utilized with therapy. And please know that we have therapists at different fee scales. So by all means, let us know your ability to pay, and we will do our best to accommodate you. So I want to then move into, if there are no calls, if there are no questions, are there any questions in the chat room? Does anybody want to throw out a question in the chat room?
Not quite yet.
Not quite yet? Okay. All right. So I'm going to move on to a song by uh, Alicia Cara, Scars to Your Beautiful. Very relevant song to this topic. She just wants to be beautiful. She goes unnoticed. She shows no limits. So there it is. She wants to be beautiful because she wants to be noticed. She craves attention. She praises an image. She prays to be sculpted by the sculptor. That reminds me of her need to be sculpted by a plastic surgeon to get it right so that she can be beautiful. Oh, she doesn't see the light that's shining deeper than the eyes can find it. So she's lost touch with her own inner beauty because there's so much emphasis on the outer beauty, deeper than the eyes can find it. And that's another thing, is that if we don't find beauty within each other and make a real effort to connect with each other, then we're going to be in this endless loop of finding more and more ways um, to be beautiful on the surface level and not really connect on a deeper level. Deeper than the eyes can find it. Maybe we have made her blind, so she has to cover up her pain and cut her woes away. I love that line. Cut her woes away. There goes the scalpel again. Because cover girls don't cry after their face is made. But there's a hope that's waiting for you in the dark. You should know you're beautiful just the way you are. You don't have to change a thing. The world could change its heart. In other words, that paradigm shift where the world sees through the lens of that not cracked lens, a clear lens of perception, and can see you and your authenticity. The world could change its heart. No scars to your beautiful, we're stars and we're beautiful. And you don't have to change a thing. The world could change its heart. She has dreams to be an NB, so she's starving. So there's where she gets back into the bulimia, the anorexia. You know, cover girls eat nothing. She says, beauty is pain, and there's beauty in everything. So we're big time rewarded in our pain of starving ourselves and becoming super thin and cover girls, and that's a whole another industry. What's a little bit of hunger? I can go a little while longer. She fades away. You don't see her perfect. She doesn't understand she's worth it. Or that beauty goes deeper than the surface, because that's not what's advertised. Beauty is on the surface. So, to all the girls that are hurting, let me be your mirror, help you see a little bit clearer that the light that shines within, there's a hope that's waiting for you in the dark. You should know you're beautiful, just the way you are. No better you than the you that you are. And if there are no call ins and no questions, then I want to thank everyone and grab a free copy of the book. And if you're watching this, then please subscribe to the channel and please request a consultation, and we're happy to offer you one. And don't forget to download that free PDF, Be the Cause Healing Human Disconnect. And much of what I've spoken about will be theoretically explained by the panels. So thank you very, very much. I really appreciate you tuning in and listening, and I'll see you next time. Good night, everybody. And if you've enjoyed my show, please subscribe to my channel. If you need help, please call the number below. And if you've enjoyed